So we're going to take a look at the Invisible Man fighter from the Unmatched system of games. So Invisible Man is from the Cobble and Fog set. This features a bunch of characters from Victorian literature. Invisible Man, of course, being written by H.G. Wells. You don't see his face or his hand there on the mini. It's one of the more clever designs that they have created. Look at Invisible Man here. Invisible Man is a melee hero with a health of 15. He is by himself, does not have a sidekick down here, just an H.G. Wells quote. So at the start of the game, after you place Invisible Man, place 3 fog tokens in separate spaces in his zone. These fog tokens are what he has. When Invisible Man is on a space with a fog token, add 1 to the value of his defense cards. Invisible Man may move between 2 fog tokens as if they were adjacent. Fog tokens do not move around when you maneuver. There are card effects that will move them. There are some bonuses that you can get in addition to the defense value for being on the fog. There's some bonuses you can get for having Invisible Man on the fog. Also, some nasty things can happen to opposing fighters if they end up on the fog. And of course, the fog will end up spreading around and give him ability to just jump and hop around the board. So that's pretty crazy. Also got to remember that when Invisible Man is being moved by card effect, he has to follow his rules, and so you can actually force to move him through his fog tokens. And as we get into Invisible Man's deck here, we're going to say that he is a very different fighter. He is not one that I have a lot of experience or expertise or success with, but I'm still going to go ahead and show you what I can about him here. He just plays very differently, and I'll go into some of that reasoning. We'll get into his deck, and we're going to start off with his schemes, because I think these schemes are kind of what Invisible Man's whole deck is built around. So, Reign of Terror. If Invisible Man is on a space with a fog token, deal 2 damage to any one opposing fighter. Not adjacent fighter, not fighter in his zone, just any fighter. All you got to do is get to one of your fog tokens and deal some damage. So yeah, right there's just 4 auto damage that he just gets to do out there, and it's not a lot of work for him to do that. Step lightly. Deal 1 damage to an adjacent fighter. If Invisible Man is on the space with a fog token, deal 3 damage instead. Now this one takes a little bit more work. The other side of this is after them getting dealt damage, the opponent moves a fog token up to 2 spaces. Generally speaking, they will probably move the one that you're on. So unless you're playing this first action and have a chance to maneuver away, you're probably going to end up not on a fog token at the start of your opponent's turn there. So it's something to think about on when you play that. But this is like 6 more auto damage there. We'll get into some more schemes. This guy is a schemer. Rolling Fog. Move 1 fog token to another space and gain an action. Just pretty much just get to pick up a fog token and stick it where you want it. 2 of those. Vanish. This is really an extremely useful card, and when you play this thing is going to be really important. Vanish, recover 1 health, remove Invisible Man from the board. At the start of your next turn, place Invisible Man in any space. If you played this as your first action, end your turn. So this just takes Invisible Man off the board. Can't do anything to him when he is not on the board. So that's a lot of schemes that this guy has. I mean, just look at all those. We get into Invisible Man's attacks here. Surprise attack. Surprise! Attack of 5. Immediately cancel all effects on your opponent's card. If Invisible Man is on a space with a fog token, move that fog token to another space. So a few things to look at on this here. This does cancel effects, which can be good for an attack because you can make sure that some of those defensive effects don't happen. Of course, this won't be able to cancel the effects on a defensive immediately because they will kick in before your cancel. And you have to remember that after this attack here, you are not going to be on a fog token anymore because that fog token is going to get moved. That could be good or bad. It means if you play this second action, you're going to end up not on a fog token and won't have your defensive boost. But it also means that you can stick a fog token where you want it if you have a chance to get to another one and run off to that spot. And of course, if this does get feinted, the moving the fog token effect of it would get canceled. Emerge from Mist. If Invisible Man started this turn on a space with a fog token, this card's value is 5 instead. Now you have to start it on a fog token, okay? That doesn't mean go through one. That doesn't mean start off the board and move on to it. You have to actually start it. This is basically his version of a momentous shift, but you can get a pretty good attack out of that. Slip away. 3, move 1 fog token to a space without a fighter, then place Invisible Man on that space. Now, a lot of times, you're not trying to win the combat with this 3. You're just trying to get the effect there, being able to move a fog token to a space without a fighter and then place Invisible Man on it. You can use that to just run away and get out of where you are. If Invisible Man gets pinned, that's a great way to get out of there. It can, of course, get feinted, but it's a way for him to be able to run off. He's very good at running off and hiding and going away. Okay, going into his defense cards, and he actually has a large number of defense cards. Into Thin Air, a defense of 4. After combat, move Invisible Man up to 1 space. Your opponent then moves a fog token up to 3 spaces. So you got 2 of those. That lets you move him a little bit away from where he's at. It's not a whole lot of movement, but you can at least not be adjacent for the next attack. If you're going up against a melee fighter, your opponent is going to get to move a fog token up to 3 spaces. So that's the downside of it. The next one we will have is Coded Messages. Draw 3 cards, then choose 2 cards from your hand and put them on top of your deck in any order. So this is you get to draw 3, and then you put any cards from your hand on the deck there. So that can be some of the cards you just drew. That can be cards that were already in your hand. You can kind of set things up and have the ones in your hand that you want, and you know what your next 2 cards in your discard pile are going to be. So that can help you set up stuff. Lurking. Defensive 2, draw 1 card and choose an effect. Move Invisible Man to a space with a fog token, or move 1 fog token up to 3 spaces. And we're getting into the versatiles. Dreaming of Revenge. Got 2 copies of this. If Invisible Man is on a space with a fog token, all opposing fighters on spaces with fog tokens take 1 damage. This is a good way for him to get some additional damage off onto some guys, because now it'll be a little bit difficult to pull off because you're going to have to be on the fog token when you do it, and you're going to have an opposing fighter on a fog token, which they are going to try to avoid. That right there kind of gives them a reason to not just sit there and camp out on their fog tokens and block them. You know, there will be some nasty consequences to doing that for too long. Confound. This is a versatile of 3. There are 2 of these. Every time I see this artwork, it makes me think of the movie Metropolis, if you have ever seen that really old film. This is a versatile of 3. After combat, your opponent may choose to discard 1 card. If they do not, you move each fog token to another space. So you just get to move them wherever you want them at. Or they have to discard a card. Now they may have some card that they're willing to get rid of. You know, it'll depend on the situation. If you can play this when they don't have a lot of cards, you stand a better chance of getting your fog token movement there. Covert Preparation. There are 3 of these, versatile of 2. Draw a card. Move one fog token up to 2 spaces. Then your opponent moves a different fog token up to 2 spaces. So some things to remember on this one. Choosing a fog token and moving it up to 0 is fine. You're like, I moved it 0. They can't move that one now. So if you want to just keep one in the space that it's in, you can absolutely do that. Like if you're on one, you can just be like, I move that one 0, and then they have to move your other ones. And we have impossible to see. Reversal of 2. Immediately the value of your opponent's attack or defense is 0 and cannot be changed by card effects. Other card effects still happen. He has 2 of these. Wait, so where are the common cards? Yeah, that's right, Invisible Man, you got no common cards. He's got no feint. He was the first character to come out with no feint. We do have Impossible to See. And Impossible to See does have a canceling ability of sorts that it will cancel the value of the card. This doesn't get rid of any effects on it though. You know, if you played this into like Buffy's cartwheel kick, she could still, you know, run up to you and hit you for the damage because that's card effect damage and not damage from it. But it still also protects you from things like a momentous shift. If you were to play this defensively into a momentous shift that got activated, they would still not be able to get you there because the value can't be changed by card effects. So it's still a pretty powerful card. It just has limitations to it. Feint has limitations. This is just a little bit different limitations on it. You also have, as a consolation for having no feints, the cancel ability here on surprise attack, which when paired with a 5 is a pretty good effect. So let's take a look at some stuff here. We were talking about these schemes earlier, and that you've got 2, 4, 7, and 10 potential scheme damage right there. Pretty much as Invisible Man, you want to find a way to get all 10 of this damage here. You get all 10 of this damage, then all you have to do is just run around the game, evade, be defensive. You can be defensive. I mean, look at all this. You also start thinking about the fact that these get a potential boost on them when you're on a fog token. You could have up to a 5 defense, which is pretty crazy. These 3s become 4s, which are pretty solid, and these 2s become 3s, which are all right. All you got to do is just come up with the damage that you need after that 10 there. And that's also not to forget about Dreaming of Revenge, which can get you some more damage on there. Even if you don't land it with the attack there, you could still potentially get another 2 damage on a hero there. So you could deal like 12 damage to a hero with this deck just off of this auto damage and the effects on that versatile card there. Now the fog tokens, generally you'll want to get them spread out so that you can move around the board. Your opponent has opportunities to be able to move your fog tokens, and when they try to move your fog tokens, they are probably going to try to push them together, so that way you don't have as many options for running around. I mean, if your fog tokens look like this, you're pretty much got 2 places you can jump to essentially. This particular board here, Baskerville, is probably one of the better ones for playing against Invisible Man because you do get a little bit more movement running around there, and that can help, while not negate his ability, at least kind of counter it to a certain extent, the same way that Baskerville kind of counters the ridiculous movement that Sinbad can get late in the game. So yeah, Invisible Man, definitely a very different fighter. He is not like most other fighters in here. It has a very different play style. If you can figure it out, he can be really great. So do you have any thoughts about Invisible Man? Well, if you do, you can leave them down in the comments section and let me know. You can also give this video a thumbs up and a like because we always like that. And you can take a look at the other videos that I have on my channel with the other Unmatched content, the other fighter reviews, rounds from tournaments, and general Unmatched videos. And you can also subscribe to my channel to make sure that you don't miss anything that I put out. So we'll see you around on another video.